Welcome everyone to the 68 Table Talk. This month we are focusing on hunger in EDU, known also as hunger in higher education. Today I'm just so blessed. We are blessed to have many panelists from esteemed universities and organizations. And again, I would like to welcome all of you with this 68 table talk. We've been going around for, over 5 years on a monthly basis. And some of the people that you will see here are the people who were guests in the past, but also from the national level, we will have also representatives. So at this point, I would like to show you a short video so that you will understand more about this event. So at this time, I would like to introduce Juan Rivera, and he will be the one who's going to do the opening prayer. Juan?
Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Juan Rivera. I'm a member or student from a partnership between North Central University and Lakeview Church. Lakeview Church is here in Indianapolis. And in this partnership and the compromise that Lakeview Church has with our community and our country and our state. So I'm a part of that, and I'm a current student of that, and I'm just gonna ask you for bow your head, and we're gonna pray for every college student in this state in this country. Okay, Father God, we give you thanks for this opportunity for this morning. I ask you, Father God, the Word of God said that if you ask, you shall receive. We give you thanks, Father God, for every single college student. We know, Father, from my individual experience, I know what we go through different difficulties, the overwhelming, the fear, and all kind of stuff. But I ask you, Lord, to remove. There is power. The Bible said, Father God, the blessing of the Lord makes a person rich, and he adds no sorrow with it. So we ask you, Father God, to remove, to take over the fear and the overwhelming of every single student in this country, Father God. And we truly believe that you can do everything we ask. And we give you all the glory. We give you all the honor and all the praise. And I pray in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you again for joining us today for the 68th FHL Table Talk. I'd like to just share with you what Faith, Hope, and Love is about for those of you who haven't heard about us. FHL was founded in 2005 to do mission trips in our own backyard. It became an annual event celebrated in the entire state of Indiana. And I found out that events are good. However, a lifestyle of mission is even better. And this was the reason why FHL is now a training and consulting organization empowering food pantries in churches and in other locations. You know, simple things can be powerful. You probably have experienced these kind of things that when you felt it's not all important, but later on it made a world of difference in others' lives. For example, our organization was birthed out of just a simple outreach, one-time outreach in 2005, but it changed the perspectives of dozens of people. Through the encouragement of many people, Faith, Hope, and Love community was established. Last year, when the government, you may have remembered this, declared that the pandemic was spreading throughout the country, I made one phone call to a stranger. Through that one call, a series of events happened and transformed a vacant building into a drive-through food pantry in Castleton, Indiana. I didn't know it was going to happen. By the end of 2020, we served in that one location alone over $500,000 worth of food, and we had 300 people turn their lives to Christ. I'm sharing this story is not to brag, but to encourage you to look back to those simple things in life that made a huge difference in others. This may not be just another virtual event. This event may look like just, another gathering or webinar, but it could spark a spark that may inspire our colleges and universities. It could be a catalyst for change in the way we address hunger in higher education and also the rest of the nation. It could change a life, or it could change the direction of the next generations for the better. Again, thank you for taking the time to join us for this momentous event that could change the future of a college student or a generation. And now I'd like to introduce to you our esteemed moderator from Indiana University, Dr. Brad Gardner.
Thank you, Merlin. So glad to be here for two reasons. One being that I'm honored to be in the midst of these panelists that we have with us today. And secondly, I will readily admit that this is a topic I need to learn more about. So I'm hoping to be educated myself as we have our conversations. I'd like to share with you or introduce to you our five panelists, if we can put them up on the screen. First, we have with us Shelley Suttles, Associate Professor and Agricultural Economist from IU Bloomington. Emily Weichert, Executive Director of Feeding Indiana Hungry. Unai Miguel Andres from IUPUI. Tony Morris from the University of Indianapolis. David Kopish from the Hope Center at Temple University. So excited to have all of you here today. What we'll be doing this morning is asking each of our panelists to share some ideas and concepts, some needs that exist related to food insecurity in higher education, and then we'll have a conversation. We also invite you, if you're listening or watching, to enter any questions you might have in the chat section. So David, we're going to start with you. Enlighten us, please.
Great. Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks again, Merlin and Brad and everyone else for inviting the Hope Center. So glad to be here, and I appreciate the opening remarks and prayers. I am David Kopish. I'm the Associate Director of Community Engagement at Temple University, the Hope Center for College, Community, and Justice at Temple University, which is in Philadelphia, which is where I am today. And we are an action research organization or action research center, and we look at and measure student basic needs and security, particularly food insecurity and hunger. And then we help colleges and universities and communities think about strategies to address hunger on campuses. So we do both research, but we also want to engage in action. And so glad to be here with you. I'm going to share a few slides where I will be, let's see if I can find it. There we go. And there we go. So that is us, the Hope Center at Temple University in Philadelphia. And we did a survey in the fall of 2020. We have been doing this survey every year for 5 years of students across the country. In the fall, we had about 150 colleges and universities across the country participate. About 125, 130,000 students, so a pretty big database. And this is what we found. We found that at two-year institutions, two-year colleges, 39% of students experienced food insecurity in the past 30 days, the prior 30 days to taking.
David, if I can interrupt you for just a second, could you share your slides in a larger version?
Oh.
See the full show version.
Aha. Let me make sure I know how to do that. You tell me what it looks like on your end.
Still, if you go to the presentation mode, I don't know, or play from start perhaps at the top.
Let's see. What does that look like? Still small?
It's still small, yes.
Okay. Let me, still small?
Yes.
Let me see. What does it look like now?
It's still the same.
It's the same. Well, I apologize. What I can do if...
Try at the bottom where it says where the presentation mode might be, on the bottom, very bottom of the screen.
Right.
To the right?
Right there.
Right there. Huh.
What does that look like?
It's
Same.
still. What's happening here?
Let's presenter view.
You can try that and see.
How does that look?
Still the same.
So sorry. Well, what I can do in the interest of time is just share verbally so we don't take up too much time here, and I'll just unshare if that's okay. And I'll try to figure it out as others are talking later. How's that?
And if we could share the slides later as well, if you'd be willing to do that.
Sure. Okay. So are you seeing me now and not my slides?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we'll do it the old-fashioned way. I will talk it through.
Okay.
So again, we do a massive countrywide national survey, and what we ask are questions that measure food insecurity, right? So we're getting a pretty broad cross-section of student experience in this country. And what we found, which is pretty consistent over 5 years, is that around 4 out of 10 students at two-year colleges are experiencing food insecurity, and about 3 out of 10 at four-year institutions, right? So there is a gap there between the two-year institutions and the four-year institutions, but still 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10. This is a significant population of our students across the country experiencing food insecurity, okay? We ask questions like, I worried about whether my food would run out before I got money to buy more, right? I couldn't afford to eat balanced meals. The food that I bought just didn't last, and I didn't have the money to buy more. So we ask us, and if there are researchers on the call that are very interested in the measurement and the tool that we use, we could share the survey tool so you have a sense of, well, how are we measuring food insecurity? But it's a series of questions that students are using to measure food insecurity. And again, significant numbers of students across the country. I think it's very interesting, and I pointed out two-year college students and four-year college students experiencing different levels, right? I think it's also very important for us to look at other disparities along lines of race, gender, and other differences. So we do see differences between white and non-white students. Non-white students are reporting, in some cases, 10 to 15 to 20% higher percentage points of food insecurity that they're experiencing compared to their white peers. So we're always advocates of disaggregating the data, right? When we do these kinds of surveys and measurements, and you all are involved in similar surveying and measurements, I'm sure, at different levels, we're always an advocate of disaggregating the data so you can really sort of see, well, how is this impacting different groups differently, and therefore tailor our strategies a little differently. I'll just share a couple more items with you, and I think this might lead to some action steps at the end if we get into that. We measured, and all of you who are in higher ed know, right, last year we saw an infusion of money to institutions of higher ed, much of which had to be given out in direct aid to students, right? Emergency aid grants to students, right? And we measured how students used those emergency aid grants, because it's our belief that that's a real, up until now, underutilized tool to help address hunger on campus. So the main reasons that the main uses of emergency aid last year during the CARES Act money that went to schools, the kind of tied for third reason was that they used that money to buy more food or to eat healthier food, right? So staying enrolled was number one, paying off, actual tuition costs, but actually using those emergency aid grants to buy food was, in some cases, more than half of all students. That tells us, right, that, direct aid can be a helpful strategy to addressing student hunger. On the kind of more challenging side of that, and I'll pause after this, is that there are other supports out there that we know students are not using. We know that SNAP, and this has been a big push of ours, and I'm sure many of you as well, only 18% of students who experienced a basic need insecurity last year received SNAP, right? And we know that not all students are eligible for SNAP, but we know now, right, with the expanded eligibility under current legislation during the pandemic, there are more options and more of it's more accessible now to receive SNAP as a college student. So I think that's something we really need to be looking at this year. How do we promote SNAP in a more effective way? How do we close that gap between students, half or more of whom are saying they are food insecure, but only 19% of them saying that they're getting SNAP, right? Which is in some ways probably the most powerful tool to deal with food insecurity. We have some policy priorities that maybe I'll hold for later in terms of, well, what could we do in terms of advocating on the state or federal level to address food insecurity. But I just wanted to share a few of those data points with you. I will try to get these slides up and running or to you somehow so that you have the full data set here. But hopefully that gives you some context for the rest of the discussion. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. Some great data there and some great fodder for conversation we'll be having later. Next, I'd like to invite Tony Morris, who is an assistant professor in the School of Nursing at the University of Indianapolis. Tony.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's honored to be here. I'm trying to multitask. Can you see my screen? I'm trying to navigate to the presenter view here.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so can you see just the
Yes, we're good.
full screen? Okay, perfect. So thank you again. Very honored to be here. My name is Tony Morris. I teach at the University of Indianapolis. In the School of Nursing, I teach a community public health course. So that will be the lens of which I talk about a little bit today. I have a few slides just to kind of keep me on track and also to help for visual learners that might, like to follow visually along as well. So like I said, I teach in our undergrad program. University of Indianapolis is a mid-sized institution that's private in Indianapolis, so on the south side of Indianapolis, just to kind of give you a frame of reference. So hopefully I can navigate through here as well as we talk. So just focusing on food insecurity, college students, public health measures, again, just from a public health lens. And so what we are doing here at our university, we have a newer initiative. In the past, we have a 3 to 5 year plan to institute a food pantry on campus. However, I had just learned over the last couple of months, we instituted a virtual program because the need was so high recently in the pandemic. And so we accelerated that plan a little bit. It's through the Office of Inclusion and Equity, Student Affairs, and the Professional Edge Center on campus. So 3 different entities on campus coming together. It's open to faculty, staff, and students. They do it once a month. They've ran it now for 2 months, and they've serviced about 40 participants a month. So just to kind of give you some background of what we are doing here on our campus. Again, we have plans that will roll out more largely in the future, but just because of the need and the increased requests. So the majority of the students that were serviced in these past 2 months were grad students, adult learners, and juniors and seniors. And that's largely because the freshmen and sophomores on campus typically have a meal plan. There was a small amount that was faculty and staff. So the program also is open to commuters. So oftentimes there will be households of over 5 people. So the information that I received from our food pantry was that they are driven on volunteers. So that's who staffs it. And they will give 2 big bags of food that will cover 5 to 7 days for one person. So again, they then will distribute that up to 5 or 5+ people in the household. And it's the information is garnered from a Google form that it's anonymous. They fill it out right now. Like I said, it's a virtual type of a process where they will then follow up with an email and saying this is where the distribution site is. So hopefully we will roll into something more permanent. This is not right now, it's only funded by donations. So it's not funded with any CARES Act money or any other strong funding. So just with some objectives, right? So we'll talk about defining what food insecurity is, increasing the awareness, understanding unique needs of the college students that we serve, discuss importance of screening measures, and then also, again, from that public health lens, it's the primary, secondary, and tertiary type of interventions that we'll talk about along the way. So we know that it's a major public health problem. It disproportionately affects college students. From research, there are 5 trends that are driving the increase. And so when we talk about increasing awareness, what we're really talking about is that primary prevention intervention measures that we want to put in place. So those types of interventions generally involve education. We want to help increase the student and university awareness so that we can prevent the situation from happening in the future or from happening in the first place, right? And then bringing it and increasing the awareness also then helps us anticipate and target our public health interventions or efforts appropriately. So again, helping us identify food insecurity so that we can promote the healthy behaviors that we want to see in our students, even amongst just general population, even those that are not necessarily food insecure at the time. So helping promote those healthy behaviors and then educating about meal patterns, perceptions of healthful eating, physical activity on campus, and how all of those things actually relate to mental health as well. So mental health is a huge component when we're talking about college students, the transition that they have to campus, and all of the challenges that they are balancing as well. So again, just these 5 trends that research says we are seeing a diverse population with increased financial challenges, that college is more expensive, more students are from lower income households, it's harder to pay for college by just working, and then a decreased availability for student services. So that might be, already David had mentioned a call for action of policy. So, and then just mentioning that food insecurity, it's a state, not necessarily a trait. So people can move in and out of food insecurity. And then research shows that for college students that they typically will experience food insecurity at the end of each semester versus at the beginning. So again, being able to target our knowing this information so that we can increase awareness just in general population and in the students, as well as then target our interventions to make sure that they're more effective. Then just highlighting the unique needs of college students. So just understanding that they have unique needs and remembering that food insecurity is not a single event or a consequence of one action. And that also then gives us the opportunity to implement secondary and prevention and intervention measures. So again, how can we look for opportunities to screen at-risk students, knowing that typically there are traditional students that transition from home to independence, but then there also is a category of non-traditional that we're seeing. That's that diversity I talked about on the first slide, where they're financially, they've got all these competing needs, right? They have all of these, they're financially independent from their parents, they have dependent children, they may be single parents, all of these other competing needs, in addition to their education, in addition to if they are food insecure. So, like I said, just regardless of the type of student, we need to understand that Maslow's hierarchy of needs just reminds us that we have to satisfy basic needs at the bottom level in the red before we can even think about going to or achieving the other higher order needs, such as higher order thinking and the goal of self-actualization, which is really, one of our end goals of the college experience is helping that individual or that student become the best that one can be, right? So understanding that when students struggle, they're often coping with several different challenges at the same time. So just a list from some effects, like the physical and mental effects that food insecurity has on students. So there's a very long list on the left. And then a few of the strategies that students may end up implementing on their own without help or with just survival type of methods over to the right. So just understanding that both lists can ultimately affect the student's ability to achieve their life goal, as well as having a big impact on their mental and physical well-being. So again, all of these things on the left can drastically interfere with not only their life, but their academic performance as well. So I just have a couple of more slides. This slide, I borrowed the image from a 2010 New England Journal of Medicine publication from Siegelman and Schillinger. It's from hunger and socioeconomic disparities in chronic disease. And so the reason why I thought this was interesting is because I feel like there are several parallels that could be noticed between the stressful and taxing nature of attending college and dealing with a chronic disease. So if you start at the top and you see that there's food insecurity, and then we go over to the right, those that are at risk for food insecurity may have some constrained dietary options with compensatory strategies, right? So maybe they're avoiding food at some points, or not avoiding it, but they are implementing certain compensatory strategies when they don't have enough food, or when they do have enough. So that, skipping meals, reducing caloric intake, or over consuming when they do have it, those two types of behaviors then can contribute to either weight gain and hyperglycemia or weight loss and hypoglycemia. So there's kind of a cyclical pattern. And then if you follow that down, we look at the implication of stress being added into that, and who, what college student doesn't have stress in their life, or multiple stressors. So that then will predispose the individual to obesity, hypertension, and diabetes at a minimum. There are others as well. We could throw in mental illness. There's several others. If you go over to the left, then this is where I kind of like to kind of conceptualize and tailor it a little bit more to college students, because again, this is the models for chronic disease and food insecurity, but college students have a experience a myriad of competing demands that might divert their attention and their funds from proper nutrition, and as well as place them at risk for an impaired self-management capacity. So again, it says, medication on here, but thinking about they've got other demands that are taking their time, their efforts, their resources, and that then also then just puts them at greater risk. And then following it up to the left, you throw in stress again. You could think about relationship stressors, as well as just acclimating to college and those types of things. Throwing in stress, then that can increase their weight gain, poor control of risk factors, and then inserting in the next bubble up to the left, talking about those 5 trends that we talked about that lead to increased food insecurity. So I really kind of like this model just being healthcare focused, that it could be applied very well, I think, to food insecurity and what we're talking about versus chronic disease. So the last couple of slides that I have just kind of reinforce that. Here's another study from Bruning et al. They looked at freshmen in Arizona, and food insecurity was related to poor eating patterns, poor physical activity behaviors, and poor mental health in their study, they found. So again, having this information and then knowing that food insecurity was inversely, significantly and inversely associated with concurrent breakfast consumption, daily evening meal consumption, healthy eatings on campus, and healthy physical activity on campus. So if we know these, from this research, if we can understand and implement and then tailor our intervention strategies to combat these things, then that will help us have a more effective and efficient plan in place. So lastly, just thinking about, so along the way, I talked about some primary and some secondary. One thing I failed to mention on a previous slide was knowing when these events happen in the college student's life towards the end of the semester, those types of things, and having food pantries available. That's a beautiful way to have screening measures in place. So screening measures are a secondary intervention. We talked about primary being education, secondary being a screening and connecting to resources. So when we talk about food banks on campus and having possibly the screening questionnaires that David mentioned briefly, there are some very brief questions that you could have that would help identify those at risk and connect them to resources, and not just talking about food, talking about maybe healthcare resources and bus passes, so transportation, and dealing with all of those other competing demands that they might be working with. So lastly, just upstream thinking, trying to get ahead, and upstream thinking is like putting the fence there before they fall off the cliff, so that it's those guardrails of prevention. So higher education and federal government really need to work together on policy development. And 2 of those reasons why is because it affects chronic stress and the lack of healthy eating habits that we see in this population. So David mentioned, SNAP and increasing those benefits, and then also, of course, just needing more research. So I apologize. I just noticed my time. I thought I was talking pretty quickly, but was not. So I will turn it back over if you have any questions. I know, can you guys hear me still? Okay.
Yes, I think we may have lost our host in this process. So
I think so too.
Should we proceed?
I will text and let him know.
Yeah, I would say we're still live, I believe, on Facebook.
Okay.
I think you're next.
Okay, perfect. Then I will just go ahead, business as usual. We'll keep it moving. So first, I just want to thank Merlin, Brad, and the Faith, Hope, and Love community for having me here today. I'm going to go ahead and share the slides I have.
I think we might not be able to see them without the host changing the view.
Oh, you can't see me sharing my window?
We can't, not right now.
And it's
Okay.
because the host should be doing those things.
So I am not sure. Should we log out and log back in? Or should I just...
I mean, I could present without PowerPoint if you want to wait until Merlin's maybe back.
And I don't have PowerPoint, so we can do whatever you all like.
We're
Yeah, I would.
on YouTube, so I would say we can just go ahead and continue. It said that, the entire Wi-Fi lost, the entire building lost Wi-Fi connection. That's what it said.
Oh, no. So is it even being broadcast?
It's still being broadcast.
Yeah, it's still live. So I would say, yeah, maybe we could proceed with some. Emily, if you don't have slides, and then maybe
I don't have slides either. I was going to share a couple things, but I can go without them as well. But Emily, you can go ahead first.
Okay, happy to. We can get through some of the material while we wait for the internet gods to forgive everyone. Well, thank you so much for having me. My name is Emily Weichert Bryant. I'm the Executive Director of Feeding Indiana's Hungry. We're the State Association of Feeding America affiliate food banks. I know several of the folks on the panel today, and it's great to be in touch with so many of the folks in the academic space who are doing the research to give us better answers. Our folks are the ones that are on the ground in that responsive part. And so we have 11 member food banks, all of whom are Feeding America affiliates that work with about 1,700 local agencies like food pantries, soup kitchens, after-school programs, and in many cases, working with pantries on college campuses. It's pantries within schools and within college campuses has been a more recent development over the last probably 5 years as food banks really seek to reach people where they are. If college students are already at school, it's the perfect place to meet them. If parents are already coming to the neighborhood school, it's a great place to reach them as well. In 2020, and this is a pandemic year, so keep that in mind, our members distributed 56 million pounds of food that went out in any number of ways, largely in large-scale drive-through distributions. All of our folks are still operating in a pre-boxed, most of them a drive-through scenario simply because of COVID. There was a significant increase in food going out, but there was also a significant need that came with that. Our members and the pantries that they work with are the emergency response. It's when you need food right now. Oftentimes people say, well, don't you guys want to work yourselves out of a job? And the truth is we never can, because someone's always going to have an emergency today. And, the pandemic is an emergency. The day there's not enough food in your pantry is also an emergency. So that is how we approach things. Our folks are also helping folks on a regular basis. We know that there are many clients who are coming to us, and we're part of their coping strategy to make sure that they have enough food for their households. So our folks are everywhere. You can locate them through 211. You can go to our website, which is feedingindianashungry.org. And there's a Find Your Food Bank link there. All of our members have regional territories. And so it comes up in lovely color. So you can tell what county in Indiana is served by what regional food bank. And from their websites, you can also figure out what pantries they are working with. There's the Operation Food Access Map through FSSA that also provides resources on how someone can access food at a pantry or a distribution. So that's short term, and for many, longer term. But longer term solutions, when we're talking about college students or anyone who is experiencing food insecurity, is talking about what federal nutrition programs that they would be able to access. As I think Tony had mentioned, and someone else as well, but there has been some expansion in SNAP eligibility, which I'll get to in a minute. There are other programs that can help families, particularly if they have children, access federal nutrition programs. WIC, for instance, for families with children under 6 and mothers who are pregnant or nursing, provides a significant benefit, and that's been increased temporarily with an additional $35 per person in produce and fruit and vegetable benefit. That program is run through our State Department of Health. And so if you go to, actually, if you've been looking for vaccines or anything else during the pandemic, you probably locate the State Department of Health's website. But through them, you're able to schedule an appointment, and then you would go into a county office. That tailors nutrition to both the children and the mother to make sure that they're getting what they need. We see significant fall off in that program after infants clear 1 year old. So we're not reaching as many of the young children as we could be with that benefit that continues to provide them with substantial nutrition. School-age children, we've seen free and reduced lunch, where it's up to 185% of the federal poverty level. It's one of the higher eligibility programs. And because of the pandemic, we've seen that transition into pandemic EBT and now summer EBT. So for children who were all virtual, children who missed days of school because their school opened later, if they were quarantined, if they had COVID, if something had changed in their scenario where they weren't at school, those benefits have been going out quarterly from FSSA on an EBT card, just like a SNAP benefit. They're in the process of, I believe they've just done the January through March benefits within the last couple of weeks. They'll be looking at April, May, and June benefits coming out in the summer. There's been a piece for childcare EBT as well. And the way that Indiana has done that part of it is for children who would be not yet school age, and they're applying an additional amount of funding to every household with children in that category through their SNAP benefit. So there's no need to apply, no need to prove that your childcare has been closed. They're sending it out to every child on SNAP, that extra amount, and that's getting loaded on the regular SNAP EBT card. The state is calling it a SNAP supplement. So you won't see it called childcare EBT. It's a SNAP supplement, but that's exactly what that is. And they've been doing a great job of getting that out. And then that last piece is Indiana has the first approved plan from USDA for our summer EBT program. Summer EBT has been a pilot all over the place for the last several years. And really just with the impetus of the pandemic, USDA has pushed forward to make that available everywhere. So if your child was on free and reduced during the school year, they will be getting a summer EBT card that will come out mid-summer for a flat amount. They did, in Indiana, schools come and go in different times and spaces. I can tell you my kids get out of school next week, which is pretty early. So they've taken the average number of days off, the amount per day, and there's going to be a lump sum going to each child in the household this summer for summer EBT. We know that there are great programs available across the state for summer food service that partner often with a child and adult care food program that goes to after school care or preschools. With COVID, and in a normal situation, kids are not transitioning well from school to summer feeding, and that they're missing loads and loads of meals. And so this will help families who maybe the kids aren't going to camp this summer just because they don't feel comfortable doing it, or they're trying to cobble together what it is they're going to do with kids for 8 to 10 weeks this summer. This will help that family provide food for that child throughout the summer. Again, any child who's enrolled in free and reduced whether you're in a CEP school. So if everyone in your school eats free, every kid will be getting that benefit. If you are not in a CEP school and your child is enrolled, and by the way, if your child is not yet enrolled in free and reduced, now would be a really good time to get that application in, because that's going to get you those benefits through the summer. And then finally, the SNAP changes that came from some federal legislation passed last December. This is a temporary open up in eligibility for college students. It will last until 30 days after the federal public health emergency is lifted. I don't know when that's going to be. I don't know that any of us necessarily know when that's going to be, but it's going to be a little bit. And it allows for college students who have 0% estimated family contribution or work study eligibility to access SNAP benefits where they would not have been able to before. Now, all of these things, a lot of this is an extension because of COVID. So the next steps will be advocating to make these things permanent, make them available regardless of the pandemic. We know that college students are not accessing SNAP at the rates they should be and could be. And also, that's not getting to enough of them. So if you've looked at the President's American Families Plan that he's got out there, he's in the right neighborhood. He's looking at access to community college, Pell Grants, nutrition access. So he's in that right neighborhood. It's how do we continue to advocate to get these pieces for SNAP eligibility for college students made permanent. Once we've got those pieces in place, it'll be a lot easier to make sure that college students are getting the help that they need. The last thing that I'll say, because I've not been keeping track of time at all, I had a blurb that popped up right over the timer. We have reached out, our organization, working with a couple of others, to the Indiana Commission on Higher Education, as well as Indiana Family and Social Services Administration. There's not been any substantial communication coming out from either of those agencies yet on college student access to SNAP. Quite frankly, we haven't gotten anything pushed out yet because it just wasn't within our capacity. We as two people in our organization. And so we're working with others to see what we can't get pushed out. But having information available to student aid departments, to student services, or to any of the student touching organizations, as well as folks who are helping students with financial aid. Here and I'm sorry, I live up towards the north side, so I know that I'm pretty sure there's a pantry at University of Indianapolis. I know there's one at IUPUI called Pause Pantry. Our folks seem to be at every major college town as well, and so we often have folks working with them. But getting that information out to clients as well through our members to make sure that they know that is available to them. So that's kind of where we fit into this piece. And I'm happy to turn it over to anybody else.
Shelley, would you like to go next? Or
Yeah, I can just do without PowerPoint and just kind of talk about what I was going to discuss.
fantastic. So you, and then I'll just wrap it up for the whole.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that, Unai, being our interim moderator and good
No
panelist.
problem.
So today, I just wanted to thank Merlin, Brad, and the Faith, Hope, Love community for having me here today. I plan to talk about research in food insecurity amongst Indiana college students or graduate students. So for me, I really think it's an interesting situation. We have this societal command where it says, you must live in poverty while you're in higher education. So kind of what other nonsensical situation could we put young adults in? So, ultimately we're saying, I did it, kid, you have to pay your dues. And this is despite all of the information David and Tony mentioned. We are seeing that college students are experiencing more food insecurity at higher rates these days. They are struggling with, issues around physical health, mental health, financial challenges, academic challenges. But still, we have kind of this widely shared joke about, if you're not eating ramen noodles as a college student, you don't know what living is. And it's really an unfortunate situation. And I think particularly it's nonsensical because this is a time in your life where you really need to be performing at the top of your game. But nonetheless, we say, it's funny to be food insecure at this point in your life. And ultimately, everyone has to do it. So as an economist, I'm looking at the issues of food insecurity in higher education through an economics lens. So when we look at poverty statistics across the state of Indiana, and we particularly look at 16 and 17-year-olds, And so these are individuals who are likely, high school seniors. They're thinking about making their final decisions on where they like to go to college. We see the top 3 counties in the state of Indiana are Decatur, Martin, and Wayne counties for the highest rates of poverty amongst young people of these age groups. So when in these communities, when we think about high school seniors struggling with poverty, 3 counties really have issues with their students, and thinking about, when we consider a young person who's grown up in poverty, they're currently living in poverty, and now they're struggling to make the decision about whether or not they'll go to college. It really is a difficult position we're putting these young people in. So when we think about what can we really expect for the academic outcomes of these students who are coming from any of these 3 counties, or really any impoverished household anywhere in the state or in the country who does not have a family who can financially support them? It really poses an issue for us. And I'm coming at it through an economic lens, because largely when I think about food insecurity, it's an issue of finances and economics. Your household cannot financially afford to buy the groceries that it needs, that it finds culturally appropriate or medically appropriate. And so when we think about, as young people are looking to make this transition from high school to college, and we know that quite a few young people are coming from impoverished households, we can think about the transition to college. So when we look at students that are largely 18 to 24-year-olds, what we would consider our traditional undergraduate student population, we see that the counties with the highest poverty rate amongst this age cohort are actually Monroe County, Delaware County, and Tippecanoe County. And we all know what these counties represent. That's IU Bloomington, Monroe County, Ball State University, Delaware County, and Purdue University in Tippecanoe County. And so, it really is a situation that is not, unique to Indiana. Really, US society has said, go be poor in college, and it's temporary. But we know that it's not temporary. We know that many of these students are coming from low-income households to start with, that they're typically struggling financially through college. They are really overwhelming themselves with student loan debt that they will have to repay at some point into perpetuity. So we have to think about, what is the likelihood that they will be food insecure during their undergraduate or graduate education? And given student loans, what's the likelihood they will continue to be food insecure even post-graduation? So these are important questions for us as we do our research at Sustainable Food System Science at IU. But because we are researchers, we do see, an optimistic take on this, and see, opportunity for research to have impact in this area. So back in the day when we had Connect to Help 211 in Marion County, Ann and her team would say to folks, pay all your bills first, and we'll figure out food after you paid all your bills. And I imagine this typically works the same for college students. Pay your tuition, pay your fees, pay your rent, charge your books to your student account, cover everything you can through student loans on your account with the university, and then figure out everything else. And so that everything else typically ends up being food. So in our work, we really see opportunities for additional research to understand student income. So whether you're participating in federal work study or have a part-time job, and how that really interfaces with student expenses, so the cost of a college education, but also the cost of living in the community you see. So when we think about the 62% of 18 to 24-year-olds in Monroe County living in poverty at IU Bloomington, we can say, really this is likely an issue that comes down to the cost of living. Indiana Institute for Working Families has showed us that it's actually more expensive to live in Monroe County than it is to live in Marion County. And so Monroe County actually follows Hamilton County in being the most expensive county to live in the state of Indiana. And so I really think that needs to be understood and discussed. And perhaps, students can be provided support given the region or the university that they're attending. I think additionally, we need to get a better understanding of, the changing student body demographics. What's the composition of the student body? In the past, we said undergraduate students are young, they're single, they don't have kids, not a care in the world, they're going to college. But now we know, those demographics are changing. Should we be thinking more about older students with families who might actually qualify for food assistance when a young person without kids wouldn't have in the past? Or should we be thinking and additionally about more international students who might not qualify for any federal food assistance, whom will always have to be reliant on charitable food assistance in this space because they just unfortunately won't qualify for SNAP, WIC, or other federal benefits? So I think in the past it had been an old discussion around, if you're a full-time student, you don't have any dependents, you aren't going to qualify for SNAP, or any other type of federal benefits. And that was kind of an end of story discussion. But in our research, we have actually been awarded a Robert Wood Johnson Foundation grant to look at food insecurity in Indiana households with young children. And this research has 3 parts. First, we're conducting focus groups with families across the state of Indiana. Second, we're conducting focus groups with FSSA staff and their SNAP and TANF caseworkers. And lastly, we were able to partner with FSSA, and they've shared with us their administrative data on SNAP applications. So we're able to look holistically at everyone who has applied for SNAP in the last 5 years and understand their household demographics and the demographics of their community. And so something interesting about the focus group findings, largely we see the conversation is the same. So students are, and folks in this space are saying, we have students who are enrolled more than half-time and they likely will not be eligible for SNAP benefits, like Emily mentioned. And of, the families and the caseworkers who we've had focus group with, they say the exemptions that do exist are incredibly complex and difficult to navigate. So there are a variety of different exemptions, outside of even the pandemic-related exemptions that Emily mentioned that folks can most likely, qualify for SNAP for. So if you're on federal work study as a full-time student, if you're actually under 18 or over the age of 50, you most likely will still qualify for SNAP, even though you are a full-time student. But once you have children, it becomes incredibly complex. So if you think about SNAP qualification as a full-time student with dependent, we think about being a single parent, having children under 12, under 6, it gets incredibly complex. So we are continuing in this vein of research. So we ask all of you, if you are interested in joining us in additional research, that you connect to a website called foodcommitaraw317.com. We do have a household survey that's currently out. So we ask all of you to take this survey so we can learn more about the food environment of Indianapolis and Marion County residents. And I will share that information with Merlin so it's available for everyone. And I'll turn it over to Anai. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Shelley. We're almost at an hour, so I'll promise I'll keep these in 2 minutes. I'll just ask Merlin to have me back to talk more in the future. No, but thank you so much for everybody that was in this event. Everybody shared fantastic information and everything that you are doing. I think if Merlin was here, he would probably said he appreciates how we're coming at all these issues from different aspects, and I think we got fantastic calls to actions from everyone, and it kind of shows the complexity of these food issues. I just want to highlight a couple of things that everybody said. So there was so much information, I'm not going to add anything new. So something that it has been said all throughout the system is the need to have a stronger or a more supported emergency food system, which are those pantries and soup kitchens that are helping these students. And it's wonderful, the research that from Tony and Emily and Shelley and David, all the job they're doing and understanding what the barriers are. So always keep in mind sometimes that also, as we think about college students, university students, there's a lot of stigma going on. And while it's fantastic to have pantries at the university level, there's a lot of individuals that are not going to feel comfortable going on unless it's the last resource. So there's alternative methods for that. And as universities are working, trying to develop these systems, there's alternatives like having it in partnership with the department rather than having a centralized pantry, for example, or looking at where these students live to try to maybe move a mobile pantry that could go to the neighborhood so they would not be seen by all their peers. Emily and Shirley talk about, and David talk about SNAP and the usefulness of it. Through the pandemic, there have been a lot of regulatory changes that are extremely important, and I know that both at the federal and at the state level specifically, the agencies that coordinate these programs are working really hard to try to see how things have changed and work, and people are using these changes to advocate to the federal government for permanent changes on these programs rather than just take all these benefits when the pandemic is considered to be gone or when we call the emergency, the public emergency finished. And I know that everybody's working fantastically looking at that, and we're looking right now at all those CBT recipients and how they're using it in all the different aspects. And we're working, the Policy Center is working with the FSSA and other researchers in that aspect as well. And then the other thing that Shelley brought that I think a lot of the times is forgotten, but Tony also mentioning the level of priorities of students, is that food access is just a symptom of a bigger issue. It's not something that comes in isolation. It comes from a system where, in our case with the students, they're considered to be full-time students and not work, or just work at really part-time, which is really hard to maintain. So we're talking about an economic issue as well, a societal and economic issue. And there's studies that have shown us that individuals that are born in lower income families, they are far more likely to remain in low income households when they are adults because they have all these extra barriers. They have lack of opportunity to move economically speaking. And we also know that a lot of students, when we look at poverty rates, as Sheila was saying, like there's high rates of poverty in counties that have high populations of students living within them. And when we look at neighborhoods within Central Indiana, for example, younger adults, so those that are between 18 and 29, and I say this because I think it's important to start including as well those grad students, those upper level students, they tend to live in highly concentrated poverty areas. Those are areas where the poverty rate is over 40%, which is extremely scary. And this comes from the expectation that grad students are supposed to survive with an assistantship or fellowship that it pays $80,000 a year. In some schools, in some other ones, goes like as low as $9,000 a year throughout the state. So I think it's important to think about this issue holistically. And as Shirley was saying as well, like thinking of what wrapping up services can be done through a lot of systems. So as everybody's working to deal with the student populations or those suffering from low income related concerns, maybe direct them to other services they can use. A lot of the times, unless you spend time researching, you will never know what you can get access to. So for those of you that are in food pantries, if you see individuals that might be younger, that you see them for the first time and they seem shy, it might be useful to maybe have a side conversation with them and direct them to places where they can get extra resources. Because even if you cannot provide them with a SNAP for them, if you can provide them with an assistant to pay rent, that's money they can free to buy their lunch, right? So that's kind of how I will encourage everybody to think about these issues, to try to think about what other needs they might have that someone might help them with, that might allow them to actually purchase the food with that extra cash they now got because they got covered the extra rent, or someone was able to provide them a repair for their car, or they got a free bus pass to get to where they need to. So with that said, I want to thank everybody else for being here, both to the presenters and those that have stayed with us through all these technical issues. And I know that Merlin would say that he would hope to see you again in the next table talk, it's always the second Thursday of the month. So it will be June 10th, I believe. And we look forward to seeing you all. Thank you so much.
And I'll just add briefly that if you're interested in more information on how to take action, how to advocate, how to be in touch, I would encourage you to check out our website where we do resource updates. There's currently a SNAP outreach form for the general population in English and Spanish there. As soon as we have directed college students resources, we will put those up as well. Our website is feedingindianashungry.org. And then feedingamericaaction.org is our national organization. There are fantastic resources there. There is state-specific data. There's different reports to click on. There's options for whether you're an advocate, whether you're a provider, whether you're a policymaker that provide all sorts of information about what's going on and what we're advocating to Congress through child nutrition reauthorization, through any of the COVID relief packages. And it's a fantastic way to get plugged into what's going on there.
And I would also add just a call to action for those of you who do operate food pantries and hot meal sites, and do have a student population patronizing your agency. Thank you. Keep up the good work. But also realize we do have a nice, very sleek technology available in Indianapolis right now. It's called Community Compass. Young people or anybody really can download it from the iPhone or Google Play. It is a piece of technology created by the City of Indianapolis and Indy Hunger Network that helps Marion County residents navigate food and nutrition assistance. So you can chat with a chatbot to sign up for SNAP or WIC, or you can search food pantries and hot meal sites in your area. And, for students looking for anonymity, it's just as sleek and cool as any other, widget they would have in their phone. So definitely share Community Compass. Thank you.
Quickly, a call to action, I would think from a public health lens is, just the primary, secondary, and tertiary type of elements of just increasing awareness. And thank you, Shelley, for mentioning the starving student, because again, that's such a misnomer and a myth. It's not healthy whatsoever, but it's something that we just is our culture, and we actually, it's a badge of honor sometimes, I think, but it's not conducive. So I think that would be a first step, is just recognizing and understanding that that is not acceptable for students, and helping, and then also the screening mechanisms as well to help connect them to resources. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good day.